bucket drumming. My name's Orion. This is Miss Ashley.
Hi.
Alright, today I'd like to show you a little bit about the drums and percussion and music. So we're going to take a little journey. I have some rhythms for you that come from all over the world. We're going to start here in America, and then we're going to go to Cuba. We might go to Brazil. Let's see where we end up. So stay tuned. So before we start making some music, I'd like to talk about what a percussion instrument is, how music is made, what the roots and foundation of music is. So stick with me. Most of the examples that we're going to be using in this class, we're going to be using a bucket drum. So we have the drumstick and the bucket. And that is a percussion instrument. The snare drum, which is here, is also a percussion instrument. We have the shaker. And we also have the kalimba. What do all of these instruments have in common? Well, the answer is that a percussion instrument is any instrument that you strike to produce a sound, okay? So a great example of that would be a drum. You can use your hands, you can also use a tool like a drumstick, but a piano is also a percussion instrument. There's 88 little hammers inside that thing that when you push a key, they strike a string, all right? So I'm holding this instrument, the kalimba, and it's very special to me. It's from a country in Africa called Zimbabwe, okay? And it's a pitched instrument. And what that means is that I can make melodies out of it. And the melody is really the song. So just listen for a second. I'm going to improvise something. You know, and there's melodies everywhere. You hear melodies every day. Your cell phone ringer is a melody. The ice cream truck coming down the street, that's a melody. You hear music and melodies all the time in TV shows and commercials. So I encourage you to listen and recognize that the next time you hear music. So the next thing I'd like to discuss is rhythm. All right? And what is rhythm? Rhythm can be very hard to define for a lot of people. I wrote it right here just so that you guys could have a very clear one. And I think of it as the foundation of music. It's a pulse, and it gives the music context, and that's the most important word. So the most basic of all rhythms is that pulse. And I invite you right now to just tap your hand on your leg and listen to my pulse. And it's not something that's counted. There's no definition. It moves in a circular motion. It's just ongoing. And there's things like that all over. You have a pulse inside you. Your heart beats a pulse. There's a pulse to the ocean as the waves go. You can't count it, but there's definitely a rhythm and a feeling of movement. And I think that's very important. What pulses can you think of that occur in nature? So to better explain harmony, I came over here to where my piano is, and I really feel like that was important because it's also a percussion instrument, but unlike a bucket drum, there's 88 keys. We were talking about percussion instruments. That's anything that's struck, and you can use your hand or a tool. And I removed the front of my piano because I wanted you to see these hammers. And you see what the hammer is attached to the key here. And when the hammer strikes the string inside, I get a note. And that allows me to produce rhythm, to produce melodies, and also harmony, which is the sound of those multiple notes. And it's different than melody, it's a feeling. Listen. Harmony. Okay? So when you take multiple notes and you put them all together at the same time, that's called a chord. Alright? And there are different kinds of chords. The same way there's different kinds of rhythms and melodies from all over the world. So here's a major chord. I'm going to play it again. Here's a minor chord. Can you hear the difference? One more time. Here's a major chord. And here's the minor. So let's review before we proceed. We have the melody, which makes up all the notes as we hear the song. We have rhythm, which is the pulse that gives the music that we listen to context. And there's harmony, which is the feeling of many notes at the same time. Alright? So with that, and since we have a basic understanding of what rhythm is, I'd like to show you your first rhythm. And I'd like you to grab your drumstick. I put it right between my thumb and my pointer finger, and then I let all the rest of my fingers touch, and I hold it really loose and just use my hand. Now I want you to try and play this rhythm back at me. I'll leave you some space. Try one more time. Very good. Okay, so that rhythm is called clave, all right? And it comes from Cuba, and you're going to find as we move through this class, a lot of other rhythms are based off of this rhythm, and it's very useful to know. All right, so on the bucket, I want you to focus. We have two sounds we're going to get out of this bucket. We have a low note and a high note, and I get the low note by hitting the center of the bucket, not this little circle here that tends to deaden it if you have the same bucket as I do from Home Depot. But I hit the center of the bucket with the tip of the drumstick, and that gives me a nice tone. Alright? And then with the shaft of the drumstick, I use a little bit of the side, I go over the edge, and that gives me a high note. Right? So let's try that clave rhythm and make sure we can get the right sounds with the right rhythm. So clave all on the low note. With me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Join in. I'm going to stay right here. I'll give you another count. We're going to go to the high note. 1, 2, 3, 4. All up high. Very good. Let's go back low. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down low. Very good. How about half and half? 3 low, 2 high. We'll try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down low, up high. Down low, up high. Down low. Very good. So I want you to remember that rhythm, because that's how we're going to start and end all of our call and responses. Oh, I almost forgot. What is call and response? Well, You learned it actually when I was teaching you the clave rhythm, when I played it at you. And I left you that space to return it back to me. Even though it's virtual and I'm on the other side of the screen, we've communicated musically, okay? So what I'd like you to do is that when we do a future call and response in this video with Miss Ashley, you listen to what I play and then you respond in the same manner. So you're going to be playing music at the same time as Miss Ashley, and you listen for the call. Okay, so I've invited Miss Ashley back, and I'd like to do our first call and response. We're going to start with that clave rhythm, and then we're going to move into walking with our hands. But just follow me, make sure you pay attention to whether I'm using the low note or the high note, and leave space. Remember, this is call and response. So when I play, you're not playing. You play when Miss Ashley plays, okay? Here we go. I'll give you 4 beats. Clave, all on the low note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Let's move it to the high note. Half and half. Low, high. Low, high. Low, high. Stay right there. How about this one? Very good. Alright, let's try walking with our hands. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Low, high. Make sure you're alternating. 1 beat per hand. Let's switch the order. High then low. Very good. Let's try this rhythm. High, low. High, low. Very good. So those last 3 low notes are based off of the first 3 notes of the clave. And we're going to take that trip to Brazil I was talking about earlier. And those beats also make up this rhythm called the baião. So we're going to try it, all on the low note on my count. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Let's move it up to the high note. How about this one? Low, low, high. Let's stay here for a minute, because if we were playing for dancing to hold this groove for a long time. Alright? So what I'd like to do, instead of doing call and response, we're going to switch. We're going to just hold the groove. And that means repeat the pattern. So I'll give us a count. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just stay here for a bit. I'm going to bring back my shaker from the beginning of class. And then I'll give us all a count in a little bit. And we're going to play that clave rhythm. And that's how we're going to end, okay? Here we go. Good job. Okay, now that we know what the clave is, I'd like to talk about two distinctly unique American rhythms. And we have the shuffle and the Charleston. Okay? And I'm going to start with the shuffle. And if you've ever heard of the blues, that's a great American art form. The shuffle is right at the center of it. And before I play it for you, I want you to think of the sound and emotion the train or a train makes as it's going forward. And it's chugging along, and those wheels are going down the track. And it's a circular motion. It's not up and down. Okay? So listen, here's the train. Here's the shuffle. Now the shuffle is in blues, it's in R&B, it's in soul, it's in funk, it's in hip-hop, it's in jazz, and there's so many great artists that the shuffle is such an integral part of their music that I felt it worthy just to name a couple here. Alright, so we got Freddie King, we got B.B. King, we got Duke Ellington, we got Ray Charles, we got James Brown. What about Marvin Gaye? All these people had shuffles in their music. The reggae pattern has a shuffle in it. That's right, Bob Marley. You listen. So we have this shuffle, and we're going along. And unlike the pulse, the shuffle has a meter. And what I mean by that is that we have to count. So we're going to count to 4. Just follow. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now, in most American music, the 2 and the 4 are the strong beats, okay? Beat 1 is the most important, but the 2 and the 4 are stronger. So check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try and join me for a little bit. Very good. The next rhythm I'd like to talk about is the Charleston. And the Charleston is actually really interesting. It's a style of music that was based off of a dance, and at least in my experience, has been many times the opposite way. We have music and then people dance along, and I thought that was very special about this. Now, also something that's unique to the Charleston is that it can be really credited to individual people because of those circumstances. So James P. Johnson really is the inventor of the Charleston. And then Fats Waller, who was a protege of his, a piano player, really expanded upon that style. And I recommend you give both of them a listen if you can. Okay, now I'm going to play the Charleston rhythm for you. And I'm just going to use my hands this time because remember with percussion, it's about the sound. You can use anything. right? So that's the Charleston. And something that's really special about it is that it gives hip-hop a lot of its roots. So the same way people got behind this music and dance, they would get behind it and do spoken word, and they would just rap. Tara did and Johnny and Max went to school. As cozy as it was, the drum set was new. They put it all together as they went around the world. Now it's your turn, boys and girls, right? Come up with something. It doesn't really matter. Or does it? Now, another thing that's really interesting is I know a lot of my students are interested in improvising. And I think because of the popularity of hip-hop, that's a great way to show you how to explore some ideas. So I have these phrases that I'm rapping. And you can play those same phrases on the bucket. Can you hear the rap? Let's try it again. Tara did with Johnny and Matt went to school. As cozy as it sounds, the drum set was new. They put it all together as they went around the world. Now it's your turn, boys and girls. Right? And the most important thing with that, and when you're improvising, is to tell a story. Okay, so I've invited Miss Ashley back again. I'd like to do another call and response with you. I'd actually like to start out with holding the groove this time. Now that we know how to do that, we learned the Brazilian rhythm, the baião. So we're going to start there, all on the low note. And I'm going to give you those 4 beats so that you know where to start. But how I'm going to do that is with the clave. Instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm just going to play the clave. 1, 2, 3, 4. You understand? Let's give it a shot. Okay. The baião, all on the low note. Very good. On my count, we're going to switch to the high note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Stay there. I'll give you another count. We'll go back to the low note. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're grooving. On the next count, low, low, high. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that this feels good, I'll give us another count in a little bit. do that clave rhythm like that. That's a groove. Very good. Stay there. Alright, let's walk again. High then low. 3, 4. High, low. Good. Let's do it again. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Keep going. Let's go back to the Bayou rhythm, all on the low note. Yup. That should feel good. You should feel confident about that. Low, low, high. Here we go. Make sure you leave space. We're doing call and response right now. Again. Alright, we're going to end on that clave. Here we go. Okay, I hope everybody had a good time with that call and response. I wanted to bring you over here to the drum set because it's a uniquely American instrument and we learned some uniquely American rhythms earlier. But before I continue, if you had any trouble with any of the rhythms we just talked about in the call and response, just rewind and work through it again. That's why this video is here. Okay? Alright, so we have this shuffle rhythm, and you know what, let me play it for you on the drum set. Here we go. Okay, that's an example of what a shuffle could sound like. Now, before I break down what's happening, let me tell you the names of all the different parts of the drum set, okay? We have the cymbal, we have the hi-hat, we have the snare drum, we have the bass drum way down here. I'm going to lift it so you can see how big this is. And then this is the floor tom, or a tom-tom, okay? And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about each of these different parts of the drum set, because they come from all over the world. But let's start here with the shuffle. And the first thing in playing a good shuffle is feeling that pulse that we talked about at the very beginning of the lesson. So I would say start with your bass drum and just keep a pulse. And if you can't get that established, then getting that train motion on top of it is going to be a little hard. Because remember, the pulse is what gives the music context. So once you're building this pulse here, try and feel that train on top of it. And you put both of those rhythms in your hands and put it right there. We got the snare drum and the hi-hat on top of the bass drum with the shuffle. Now that's a start, but let's add something called dynamics to it. And what that means is loud and soft, alright? Because that affects a lot of the groove, how loud and how soft things are. So you remember in American music, the 2 and the 4 are the dominant beats. You gotta have that 1, but the 2 and the 4 are stronger. So check it out. I'm gonna make the 2 and the 4 accented with the snare and the hi-hat, and you'll see it brings the beat alive a little bit. That sounds way more musical to me than something that's monotone like this. That hurts my ears. Okay, if you can get that train happening on top of the bass drum, then the next move is to put that rhythm on the ride cymbal. Alright? And we're going to add the hi-hat on the 2 and 4 as well, just to add to that momentum and those dynamics. It's a subtle thing. Here we go. Okay, so that's one way you could take some of these very simple rhythms and apply it to another instrument of your choosing.